What's going on, guys? I hope you're all having a wonderful day today. For those of you that are new to the channel, my name is Ty, and today in this video, we're going to be talking about A Quiet Place Day 1, a movie that, honestly, I've been really excited for. The trailers have looked excellent, and just to be frank with you, I'm not the biggest horror guy. I know that this is very light on horror. It's more sci-fi, thriller, dystopian, whatever you want to call it, but this was definitely my type of thing, like the sci-fi stuff, the alien stuff. I really enjoyed it, and just the fact that this was an interesting concept. But did this movie actually live up to the hype? Let's just dive into it. I don't want to waste a second. Guys, it absolutely did. And listen, again, I'm not really the biggest fan of the A Quiet Place franchise because, if I'm going to be real with you, I actually watched the first movie for the first time just a couple days ago. I really enjoyed it, and I know that makes me like a noob, whatever you want to say. I've always been meaning to watch it, but I just never really got around to watching it. But I checked it out, really enjoyed it. But man, this movie, it feels like, just builds on top of what that first one did, and I think it might even be better. You do not feel the loss of John Krasinski as the director here, even though he did produce, and you put this new director right in here who I think did a fantastic job. I know his first name's Michael, his last name's similar to Krasinski, it's like Stratinsky or something. He did a great job. I wasn't really familiar with his work, but let me just tell you, man, this movie just feels like a roller coaster ride from start to finish, and I mean that in the most literal sense. In the beginning, it starts off kind of slow, you know, it's like when you're getting into your seat, you're putting on the straps, you're getting ready to go, then it slowly climbs up, you know, we build up to what's about to happen for the rest of the movie, which obviously we know is like, you know, the aliens attacking and all that. Then once we hit that big drop, once the, you know, real action starts with this film, it just doesn't let you go until the credits roll, and I absolutely love the momentum of this movie. But also, just like a roller coaster, even though things are going crazy, you're not stopping, sometimes you go over that hump and you get to breathe for a second because the coaster just slows down, you just take it all in, and I feel like that's what this movie does too. It has those moments where you're able to breathe, the characters are able to talk to each other, get to know each other, and you can just take a break. It's like a little halftime, then bam, a minute later we're right back into the action and crazy things are going on. The action in here, or whatever you want to call it, because it's not really like there's any hand-to-hand kung fu combat or anything like that. It's great. I mean, these monsters, I don't know why I'm saying monsters, these monsters feel as lethal as ever. Like, if there's one even just within the vicinity, if you even just see it like Medusa, you are dead. Like, that's how it feels. They feel like heavy, almost like from like the sound design and stuff, which is really nice. Like, it feels like they're actually there, because sometimes I feel like whether it's like Godzilla vs. Kong or something like that, they can feel almost like light, like they don't even have weight to them, the characters. These monsters feel like they're really there. And let me tell you, speaking of that, I mean, the horror in this film is really good. There's some really good jump scares in here when it's trying to be suspenseful and scary. The suspenseful moments, speaking of, I feel like a lot of movies like try to do what this movie does, but basically they create these very unique scenarios because of the concept of the film. Like, the reason that I'm so drawn to this movie and why I was excited, it's not because of the horror, it's not necessarily because of the aliens, even though they are scary. It's more because of the concept. What happens when you just put humans in this scenario where if they make sound, they die? Any sound, pretty much, that's over, you know, the sound of a cough, basically. Maybe some footsteps in the sand, you'll be okay, but that's a very unique concept. And when you're in the city that never sleeps, what happens there? Especially on the first day when no one knows what's going on. It absolutely capitalized on that. This was a really great film. I feel like our two leads here were just phenomenal. You've got Lupita Nyong'o, who hopefully I'm saying her name right, and Joseph Quinn. I feel like, in a way, from my perspective, and keep in mind, let me just explain what I'm saying here. These are two actors that have kind of had, like, that have kind of had a bad hand of cards dealt to them. Let me explain why. Lupita, I feel like she just hasn't had like that strong lead role in a film yet, and I might be completely wrong, maybe she does, but I'm just familiar with her as more like a side character in the MCU, and again, that's not a diss, because I absolutely love her role in, you know, the Avengers films, the Black Panther films. And with Joseph Quinn on the opposite end of that, he hasn't really hit his stardom yet, and from what he did get popular off of, you know, obviously playing Eddie Munson in Stranger Things, he just got called cringe, and he kind of got put into this category of like actors who are corny for no reason, and I feel really bad because it's not like he did anything. Honestly, it's more like the fandom that kind of was making like these like corny videos about him and stuff and his character, and he got put into this category, like I said, as like a cringe actor. But I feel like they both just got their big breaks in this film, especially Joseph Quinn, because I mean, he's gonna be in this, a huge summer blockbuster, and he has Gladiator 2 coming up, then Fantastic Four next summer. I mean, he's on a roll. He absolutely sold me in here. These two characters, we don't need to know everything about them, right? Because first of all, this is a scenario where they can't really talk to each other all the time. There's moments where they get to chat, you know, when maybe some loud things are going on, like we learned from the first movie. But we learn just enough to care about them. We see them interact with each other, and it's not just through their talking, it's the physical things that they're willing to do for each other and what they could do to help each other survive no matter what. Each of these characters, the trailers did not show this, and I am not spoiling anything, but each of these characters has an interesting element to them that, like I said, was not in the trailers, that really, once this movie started, made my brain go, oh, that's what we're doing with this movie. Especially with Lupita's character, where in the first 30 seconds, you'll understand what I'm talking about if you're watching this film. They do something really interesting with her and something about her, and you'll see what I'm saying once you watch the film, but I don't want to spoil it, to where you're like, oh, I could kind of see how this is going to play out. This is a very different perspective. Just like the first movie, not gonna lie, I have not seen the second movie. I know that you could call me fake, whatever, but I feel like I could just offer a different perspective because I'm not really familiar with these films. Just like the first movie, the themes in here are still about death and grief and what you want to make your life about, I feel like, and regrets and things like that. The important that are close, the people, I don't know why I'm saying the important, the people that are close to you are the most important things in your life, whether you've been with them for a long time or even just a day, like in this movie. I'm telling you, the themes in here are very strong. It kind of gets spoilery if I like actually kind of, went on to talk about that because I don't want to get too deep into it. But regardless, I love the way that it just goes on and how absolutely lethal and gut-wrenching that this world is, because they don't try to play it safe. It's not like our characters really have plot armor. I mean, they're going through it. People are getting hash-slinging slashered SpongeBob reference all over the place. I mean, it's bloody, it's gory, and you care about these people. Like I was saying, these two people that you just met that are basically just having the longest day of their lives, the most insane day of their lives, even though their own lives, like their personal lives, are pretty hectic. We just get to see what happens to these people that are going through something intense like this, and it's really just unbelievable. I mean, one thing I've got to say as well, kind of just building on top of what I was saying already, just about how this film just feels so intense, is that the New York setting, it lives up to the hype. The scale actually feels large. Like how I was talking about the monsters and the aliens actually feel like they have weight to them. In the same sense, when it comes to just the set that's around our characters, this city feels big. It feels like we're in New York City. We're not just in one building with a green screen. No, we're moving around. We're seeing different stuff. We're seeing different places in New York, whether it's a park or this building or this street, this highway, near the water. Like we're going to different areas, the subway. We're actually exploring. And even though it's not the happiest of adventures, it feels like an adventure film, like I said, because even though it's more like a survival film, but regardless, our characters get thrown into really interesting situations. One thing I do want to mention before I get into just maybe a couple of light negatives, I would almost argue, and just hear me out, because I don't think it's a perfect movie, but this is the perfect movie. Why do I say that? Hold on, let me just explain. The budget of this film was like $67 million. It's projected in its first weekend to make like 40 or 50 million just domestically. It's probably going to make back its budget in the same weekend. This film, from a CGI standpoint, from a star power standpoint, is perfectly fine. You have two big stars in here. You have Alex Wolff in here, by the way, who gets a little bit of screen time as well. I really liked his moments. The CGI looks great, and we're in a destroyed New York City. That's CGI heavy. Plus, with the monsters, that should sound like it costs a lot. But this isn't a $200 million movie. It shows that you don't need $200 million to make a great movie, because this is a great movie. Is it the best movie in the world? No. The best of 2024? No. But this just shows that you don't need to spend $150, $175, $200+ million to make a great movie. That's large in scale. Because like I said, this movie is very large in scale, and it was only a $67 million budget, give or take, plus marketing, sure. But either way, that's very cheap for this film. It's going to be making its money back immediately, and this is going to be very profitable. I hope we see more of these films, but let me get into a couple of negatives here. Like I alluded to before, the roller coaster ride, it has its breaks. And I think that right before our final climax, it does get a bit slow towards the end of the second act, just for like 10 or 15 minutes. Also, another compliment, the runtime, perfect. An hour and 40 minutes for this type of movie, I think is great. If it was 2 hours, I actually think it would have been too much. This is perfect runtime. I'm like throwing my compliments in here because I just thought this movie was so great. Another complaint that kind of ties into the one that I was just talking about, I feel like if out of all three of the acts, right, the beginning, middle, and the end, The third act is technically the weakest, and I do really enjoy it, but I just feel like, again, it kind of takes a minute to get there, and I know that's kind of the same complaint, but even just that final climax, it was definitely good, but it definitely wasn't the best. Like, I actually really enjoyed the first act, like the setup, then in the middle when they're just running around, there's all this crazy stuff going on, the monsters are there, you know, all these really interesting, unique scenarios. Then it kind of crawls to the finish line a bit. Don't get me wrong, it's a very fast crawl, kind of like how these monsters do, you know, they're like, Again, I'm kind of grasping for straws here, but yeah, I do wish towards the end, the emotions hit me a bit harder. I don't really know what it was, but I just feel like I wasn't really resonating with it. I feel like A Quiet Place, the best act is the third act, whereas in this movie, it's almost like the opposite. The first two are a little bit better, when we're really seeing the city, we're seeing what's going on, and then it becomes more personal towards the end, and I think it's okay, it's fine, but it does slow down just a bit. Regardless, this is a great sci-fi film. I would highly recommend going to see it. And listen, guys, let's get down to the dirty work here. What is my score of this film? At the end of the day, I think that I am going to settle with 4 stars. Definitely one of the better films of this year. And let me just say one thing. Honestly, I've already said this in multiple videos. I really haven't liked 2024 that much so far. I don't know what it is. I'm trying to stay positive. Don't get me wrong. My most anticipated film of the year, Deadpool and Wolverine, is still coming out. But there's been a lot of movies that I haven't been that excited to see, right? Or some that I actually had high expectations for that have just disappointed me. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes was my second most anticipated movie of the year, and I just kind of found it fine. The Hitman, I thought it was like okay. Just some films I just wasn't really super thrilled about, and I feel like this one actually hit my expectations, which I couldn't be more happy. So yeah, 4 out of 5 stars, wonderful film. Go check it out if you liked the other two. It might even be the best in the trilogy, but I haven't seen the second film. But I'm going to be ranking the Quiet Place films soon, so yeah, I'm going to be watching that second one, don't worry. But guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I love you guys, and I will see you in the next video.